Hi folks, McBeard here, back with another deck guide for you, and this one's just for you, YouTube. This is not a stream highlight of any kind. This is just for you, exclusive YouTube content. Today we're going to be talking about Foltest and the very swarmy, explosive deck that I have been enjoying on the ladder lately. Let's go. Let's get right into it. Here's the deck, folks. The basic principle of the deck is to put a lot of power on the board and to put a lot of threats on the board that serve to only increase your power. So card by card, we can start talking about the medics first of all. So medics are generally a card you don't really want in round one, and you also have to assume that Priscilla in First Light will always be grabbing a medic for you later. So you generally don't want to play these cards in round one either. First Light is actually a very dangerous card to play in round one, unless you are assured that you'll get use out of the medic, because the medic is commonly pulled from First Light. So moving into round two, you can be very aggressive if you're holding First Lights, and they can really help you in round three when you have medics pretty much only left in the deck. The medics are pulling out Reaver Scouts, which in turn can pull out more medics, as they can pull out any bronze from the deck as long as it exists there. Bringing back a blue stripe scout is also fine because it'll buff the medic, and that's 12 strength out of the bronze right there. The Reaver Scout as well. And of course, the Trebuchet is kind of the ultimate target, even if it ends up being you bring back a medic, which pulls a Reaver Scout out of the graveyard, which then pulls another medic, which then pulls a Trebuchet out of the graveyard. It's not uncommon to see combos like that. So the Reaver Scout works really well here, out of the graveyard and out of the hand. Generally in round one, though, you want to play as many Trebuchets as possible, and consider using Foltest to copy a Trebuchet as well. If there's 4 Trebuchets in the graveyard, you'll ultimately be able to pull them out more often from the field medic, as well as using the Reaver Scouts to pull all the Trebuchets out, ensure that the Reaver Scouts are in the graveyard for later use with the field medic to pull out additional field medics. The Blue Stripe Scout are really just kind of icing there. Like, you want to have extra bronze units as well. These all work together, but these help them live longer. Generally, the reason why I'm using the Blue Stripe Scout over the very popular GWENT Siege support, as the Siege support with 2 targets on the board is worth a value of 9, whereas the Blue Stripe Scout is worth a value of 8. I feel like that 1 point of flexibility is fine with me, because I generally want to buff a unit to protect it from Scorch, or buff it in the case of Foltest, copying it as well. So having that concentrated buff is a bit better, I think, as well as being able to control which unit is basically always the strongest. I feel like Blue Stripe Scout offers some extra flexibility against Yennefer Conjurer, which is a really common gold card you'll see in ranked. So Blue Stripe Scout facilitates more of a defensive style against the cards that I have been seeing to be very oppressive right now, Scorch, Yennefer Conjurer. But you could make a fine case for GWENT Siege support, and GWENT Siege support is probably works just as good in this deck. I think it's ultimately a preference as to what you want. Currently, I'm using Blue Stripe Scouts, but I think that there's no problem using the Siege supports. And I'm happy to test with the Siege supports, as sometimes games are very close, and maybe that 1 point could have made the difference. Generally, those Siege Blue Stripe Scouts, you're happy to see them out of the graveyard. You play them out of hand. They're another target for your Reaver Scouts, so you can thin your deck more reliably. Generally, though, the 11 bronze units here are good, and then your 4 special cards for bronze, 2 First Lights to help with the thinning as well. And in the case that weather does occur, rain can be kind of annoying. So being able to clear that is probably in your best interest, but the First Lights work in a pinch as well. Again, you don't really want to play them in round one because of the threat of it pulling a dead medic, and you never really want that. Lacerate as well is a popular meta choice, maybe less so now. You could probably make a case to switch these to perhaps 1 Manticore Venom, perhaps Alzur's Thunder as well. I would think that you'd want to keep 2 control cards. Personally, I like that level of control. I'm thinking a Thunder might be more in flavor these days. The Lacerates were very good against Henselt, and they are good against Consume Monster as well. And in the mirror, as this is a very swarmy deck, you'll frequently find your Lacerate will get you 12 or 15 swing out of it. But sometimes you don't really want to see it, but it's not that often that you're not getting, at the very least 9, and I think that you could do much worse. Generally, Lacerate ends up just being a value card, but with the Trebuchets always pinging, you can find yourself able to snipe things, even like Okvist sometimes with the Lacerate. And what you can't clean up with the Lacerate, you can probably clean up with Vernon Roach, who is still good, by the way, in case you were wondering, removing 5 strength and coming down as a 9 strength gold body that also summons Roach is still pretty good. And I'm testing Vernon for the most part, but I think that he has a place in a world where you have trebuchets bringing things from 7 or 6 down to 5. A lot of the time you can find great opportunities to come in with Vernon, clean up something you wouldn't otherwise have any answer to, as well as cleaning up some threatening 4 strength drops. So that's where Vernon fits in. And Roach is always going to be out and about. She just helps to thin the deck, and she's fairly strong as well in situations where you need to bring out Baron with the Lubberkin. The Lubberkin will always have a target with Roach on the board as well. If you ever wanted to run a gold card like John Natalis will always have a target for all of his buffs with Roach as well. And it's extra support in the last round. Generally, you're holding something like Shawnee until round 3 if it goes that far. And Roach is always that extra push. So I recommend Roach in this deck, although I would say that she's not as hyper synergistic as she could be in other decks. But she is buffed by Dandelion as well, which is always worth noting, as Dandelion doesn't really buff spawned units, but will always buff Roach when Roach shows up. Dandelion is a great card to play first. It attracts a lot of attention. The thing about Dandelion is that he's coming back in round 2 if you have Nanika, and round 3 if you have Nanika and Shawnee, or maybe even round 2 if you have Shawnee, depending on how aggressive you want to be. One thing I like about this deck is you can be very aggressive in round 2 if you win round 1. If you happen to have a way to bring Dandelion back, it makes it really strong to fight for the board when Dandelion is doing everything, as well as the Lubberkin as well. If you can get either of those going, it's usually good. If you can get them both going, you should be able to generate a significant lead on cards or just win round 2. So that's really kind of the snowbally nature of this deck. Dandelion helps there. Baron with Lubberkin also helps there. Your opponent is only running so many locks, and if they're locking Dandelion and they're locking Lubberkin and removing those, your trebuchets will likely be running wild. So you'll be able to maintain and build strength on the board. So Nanika, of course, brings back Dandelion, brings back King of Beggars or Priscilla if needed as well. King of Beggars often pulls Priscilla or a Reaver Scout. Just be aware of what he can be pulling. If you have Priscilla in hand, it's always a Reaver Scout, and that's usually facilitating an extra Trebuchet or Blue Stripe Scout. If you are not holding Priscilla, then be prepared to get Priscilla, but generally you're happy to see Priscilla as a pull from King of Beggars in the first place. So King of Beggars is usually used for one of these two things, but if you draw him late and in a late game, the slot may be competing between a Field Medic, a Blue Stripe Scout, or even Nanika, depending on how the game's draws go. So just be very cognizant of what King of Beggars could be pulling and plan around it. Generally, though, if he's pulling a Medic or Nanika, it's very good. So generally, thinning out your Blue Stripe Scout with Reaver Scouts early on is in your best interest, especially if you're searching for King of Beggars later. Geralt Igni is a problem solver. Generally, if you have a very large unit or even a large resilient unit, perhaps if you're playing against Nilfgaard, or if you're playing against some Scoia'tael variants with large dwarves on the board, if you're playing against Henselt that has vulnerable siege towers, huge axemen from Skellige, Geralt Igni right now can find a lot of value. So I would strongly recommend running Geralt Igni in most decks right now. Anytime I am not running Geralt Igni, I miss him dearly. So he's very strong right now. It helps you take rounds, helps you keep rounds under your full control. And in some situations with resilient units, or perhaps keeps with monsters, the monsters passive, Geralt Igni can help save the game in that case. So really dismantling your opponent's biggest strength. Geralt Igni has always been doing that, and he's still good. And finally, there's Stennis. Generally, you want to play him in round 2 if you can. Geralt Igni might be able to help you deal with the fact of getting a late Stennis, perhaps, or playing a Stennis that doesn't always work to keep you ahead in cards and points. In some situations, you will have to play Stennis in an unfavorable situation, such as a round that you have to win, or in round 3. So Geralt Igni can help you there, but generally, you're happy to see Stennis. You can make Stennis work for you. Opponents are playing spies against me a lot, so having Stennis kind of just to say, I can answer your spy with my spy, and not have a huge risk in points and stay at parity with cards. Stennis generally either against an opponent's spy or in a round 2 where you have won the first round, which you can do fairly regularly with the amount of power this deck can put out. especially with Dandelion, especially with Lubberkin. If you're holding Stennis, be very aggressive, I would suggest. And you can generally get ahead. There's other variations of this. Perhaps if you don't run Stennis, you want to run Ciri. I like Ciri as a card right now, but she kind of ebbs and flows in usefulness, I feel, as depending on... you really need to know when to play Ciri. I feel like Stennis is easier to play if you need cards back. But you could play Ciri in this deck as well. It's hard to cut any of these golds. I think the most flexible gold is Vernon, but I like that power and I like that removal. So this is how my deck is right now. I feel like it's very tight. Let's jump into a game and see how it goes. This one's just for you, YouTube. Just between you and me. All right, folks, a little ranked play with Foltest Northern Touch. This is nice. It's just us, YouTube. It's just us. And we found someone. And we found someone. All right. Well, let's see how we hold up here. Let's see who we get.
Close ranks.
Looks like it's gonna be a mirror. This may be interesting. You'll get to see a different version of this deck as well. I'm about 4,200 roughly. That's where my rank is right now, so that's like the level of my opponents as well. I did go into extended matchmaking. So holding medics early on, I don't recommend it, but we will have to mulligan Roach as well. So the first thing we'll do is we'll pitch a medic. Geralt Igni will help, I think, in this situation where he maybe builds a strong back row of Trebs. We may be able to grab him unawares with that. I think we will be able to throw away one of these blue stripe scouts as well. 2 lacerates is probably overkill, but we are forced to get rid of Roach. It is unfortunate, but we'll probably play Vernon Roach in round 1 here. So we'll get Roach out of the deck. Of course, that first light is always going to be a medic. I feel like you have to always play as if that first light will always be a medic. So just be very, very careful. A dead medic is very frustrating. You want to avoid that whenever possible. So we get to see what kind of deck my opponent is playing. He could be playing a very similar Foltest deck, or he could be playing something wacky. I have a feeling it's going to be pretty close to a mirror in this case. But that's fine. If you came in to see Northern Realms gameplay, you're going to. He's opening up with Baron and Lubberkin. Makes me wonder if I even want to engage in this round, because that's a pretty big commitment straight out of the gate. My options are actually pretty fair here. I have a Lacerate to deal with the Lubberkin, although that doesn't really get me any presence. I want to have initiative fairly soon here, because once my Trebuchets start working, it's really hard to get that strength away from me. So I think I actually will play Vernon to kill the Lubberkin. I think that gold strength is fine, and also I get to match Roach, and I have more gold strength with Baron. So then Baron. So Vernon is probably the best play here. It actually gets me ahead. Because that was a pretty high tempo play from him. If I'm able to answer that, I think that Vernon is a great answer for that. I also think it really shuts down a power play he wanted for round 1. Now I can do that too. If he ends up full testing or playing another Trebuchet on the back here, depending on where my ping goes, I may be able to play, like if he plays another 6 here, this is Geralt Igni, otherwise, however, so this is good, but my ping could go here. That was the best possible situation, I think. Now, I don't have to play Geralt Igni here. I just think that it's a fine Geralt Igni, and he's going to find value here. If he mulliganed like me, he may not have kept his medics, and I don't mind activating his medics in an early round because they're very dangerous in a late round. So I'm going to take this opportunity here, because I was lucky with the ping on the Trebuchet here.
Not your lucky day.
So not his lucky day. I'll take the lucky day. I have played 2 gold cards in this first round, though, so if I'm talking about commitment, you could say that I'm the one who's possibly overcommitting to this round. Not having a Reaver Scout ties my hands a little bit as far as how much power I really can push, or my maximum potential, but Priscilla can get me a Reaver Scout. It's just really too bad when Priscilla pulls a medic and I'm holding a medic. It's not unheard of, and it's always possible, so I'm hesitant to play Priscilla. It depends on how my opponent reacts to this play here.
Are you wounded? Again?
Manica. Again, pretty high commitment in my eyes. Pretty high commitment. The Reaver Scout is perfect, but I can also just guarantee that Foltest... I'm going to save Foltest, I think. You could make a case of full testing the Trebuchet here. I think that that would be fine. And I also think that a Blue Stripe Scout on the Trebuchet could be also fine, but I think that I need to outpower him because he's showing the commitment to the round. It's very strong with Nanika and Bloody Baron already out. So I'm going to go with Priscilla.
Well, how about a game of Gwent?
There's one medic. Please don't be another medic.
Elves must die!
So that was scary because that has happened to me in the past where Priscilla has pulled 2 medics and I had a medic in hand, which makes one medic completely dead in the matchup. Now Priscilla does say... So he used his King of Beggars. So his deck is very similar here. His deck is similar. But I can see a lot of value in Lacerate here, personally. And I also don't really mind full testing the Trebuchet, but I kind of do. I kind of do. Because that's an Igni waiting to happen. So I think I'm just going to slash the back row twice here. Back to back. But I guess we'll see. I mean, we're getting down now. Now we're about halfway through our hand at this point. We both have full test active, and I'm not giving him a great full test target. He could full test the Reaver Scout. Actually enabling more value out of my Lacerate. I don't get the ping back here. I could have killed with the Lacerate, I suppose. That would have been pretty good. It doesn't mean I don't do it, though. Now Lacerate is worth 10 in a very close game as we get down on cards. I'm going for it. Not only is our lead strong, but we do have advantage on we are moving with the card we're moving up a card. So as long as the worst thing that could happen now is a swing that I wasn't expecting that pushes us out of the round. But even if we're pushed out of the round, we can keep the card. But I think we can keep the card and also force his action. But I think I'm willing to take this pretty far. In fact,
I'm a medic.
considering, see, look at this here. This is high commitment. So I think I will double up on the Trebuchet because it actually gives me plays. It actually gives me plays because I have 2 medics in my hand. I could play just like him. If he ends up burning down my Treb, then I can resurrect them. And my medics aren't dead. My first light ceases to be dead in that case as well. But I will invite him to do that. I will invite him to do that.
Onward! Attack!
The Trebuchet didn't stagger my Trebs, which was also something that I could have looked forward to. Good old Swallow Potion. Haven't seen that in a while. I wonder if he's playing Kira Metz or something interesting. He's not fearing Igni anymore, so he's likely just going to full test it, which is fine. Which is absolutely fine. But at least I can stagger the Trebuchet now. Getting his full test used now. If I was ahead, I would consider passing, just because I know what's going to happen. His full test may end up being dead, actually. No, he can just use it on a medic, and that's probably more devastating. This was a tough call.
Must die!
This was a tough call. If anything, I'll just be able to protect. Easy full test. Easy full test. But now you can't full test a medic, and I think as far as explosive later turns, that's probably in my best interest. Essentially 3 medics in hand, as far as I'm concerned. I will pass now. I'll take the card, and I think I have a pretty strong hand going into round 2 and likely round 3. 13 cards remain in my deck. Got a lot out of him. I have a feeling he's holding Stennis just based on how aggressive he was being, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong. Beauty of a hand, all reses. We never got that Reaver Scout, though, so we can't Reaver Scout the medics. But that may be okay. In this case, the first light is dangerous to play.
I sense trouble.
He's holding Siri. Well, that makes a bit more sense.
What do you want of me?
As long as all of our plays are stronger, I think we'll be okay. Judging by the graveyard, I think that's possible as well. We're only going to get strong cards out of the graveyard. Now we can use the first light to maybe get a Reaver Scout out for... Depending on if he wants to actually... Because how is he going to win the 3rd round if he goes down on cards any further? That may have been enough. That may have been enough. It was enough. Now I really like our hand. Now our hand is very strong as far as I'm concerned. Everything we want, we can have. And our draws are likely to be pretty strong because we haven't seen King of Beggars or Priscilla or our own Baron. There's Dandelion. That's pretty good too. Dandelion may be the best thing I've seen. If Dandelion gets destroyed, we have Shawnee. If it gets locked, then it got locked, I guess. But I don't think that's going to happen.
Asking me for help. Now that's smart.
Based on how he was playing, I feel like if he was going to commit to doing something like that,
want of me?
he would have done it on my Trebs.
You one of us or not?
I didn't really give him any high threats.
Tell me
Any
you
huge
jest.
threats, I suppose.
Salutations.
So that's pretty strong, but that's okay. We can do similar things. We did see Priscilla. I apologize. We did see Priscilla. I actually think that Priscilla is pretty good here. Priscilla on a Reaver Scout is not good, and we haven't seen a Reaver Scout. So it's possible that she could actually pull two. Probably better just to play the medic and just play it safe, so at least we have a target for Reaver Scout. Got to maximize our odds of success here.
Tell me you jest.
And we're definitely in this. That was a pretty explosive turn, but I think that our
Let's
next
show
turn's going to
him
be even
what
stronger.
real
A
art
Priscilla
is.
of his own. Excellent.
Sure. Be glad.
Other low roach.
Got a bad feeling about this.
Now Dandelion's invincible. Which is much more threatening considering that this is at least 3 cards and this could be 2 for Dandelion's buff.
What do you want?
He's slowing down even though 9 is definitely not a small turn. But we're close, we're close. And the Treb is pinging.
Are you wounded? Again?
Well, how about a game of Gwent?
I want the Reaver Scout more. And this won't be a special card, or it could be First Light. But the Reaver Scout, I feel like the odds are that this is the Reaver Scout. Maybe this is the Reaver Scout? This still isn't the Reaver Scout, but we'll take the extra medic, I think. This could still be a Reaver Scout. I just gotta double check. I did play another medic, so the only thing that can Reaver Scout is actually nothing. But it's okay. It's okay, because we took it. There we go, in the mirror. We saw how strong in round 3 a handful of medics can be. Great use of... I feel like I got to use a lot of my threats, and the threats that I didn't use were used against me in the form of Baron, Bloody Baron as well. So. I think that's a pretty good showcase of the deck, and I think that the mirror actually helped in that one here. So we'll take that, 4284. You know, we're getting up there. We're getting up there a little higher. But I think that this is a high enough level of play to showcase the deck at a competitive level. And my opponent obviously believes in it as well. So good game to my opponent. And thanks for watching, folks. If you liked the video, please like and subscribe. And you can expect some more content coming from me very soon. Take care, folks.